Welcome to the Live Loving Livestream with John Davis. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Live Loving Livestream. I'm very excited to be here with you guys this evening, sitting here drinking my glass of water and ready to talk to you guys about your topics and your questions. And I want to start tonight by talking about the year 1986. It was an important year. Let's talk about 1986. 1986, my friends, Ferris Bueller's Day Off came out. Big Trouble in Little China was in the movie theater. And in 1986, the Catholic Church forgave Galileo for the earth not being flat. Literally forgave Galileo for the earth not being flat. And so the Catholic Church was a little bit behind, right? About 10 years ago, the Pope apologized to South and Central America for what the conquistadors did to them back in the 1500s. So they're a little bit behind the times. And this week, the Pope has started saying things like, I think it's time to allow priests to not be celibate. So I'm glad to see they're becoming very progressive. And actually, not that long ago, Pope Francis also said it wasn't for him to judge homosexuality. He wouldn't go so far as to say, love is love, and that's the way it is. But I just wanted to bring that up because it's an important moment. Because love in any form is not wrong. Because God is love, and I don't care if you're gay, straight, or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. If it's a loving, and you're loving and putting love into the world, you're putting God into the world. And to me, that's the most important thing about all of this, is that we're putting love in the world no matter who and what we are. And remember, we're all one. And Joshua, my buddy over here, he says, whatever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. And when you judge someone for the way they love or limit them in some form, you're limiting the flow of love. You're limiting the flow of God. And so I just wanted to bring that up and get very excited about the idea that the church is starting to become very progressive about 500 or 600 years too late. But I just wanted to throw that out there. 1986, I was already working my way towards working at Renaissance festivals. It was kind of fun. Hello, Chitra. Hello, Becky. Welcome all. For those of you who've never been here before, this is your first time. This is about an hour of just whatever questions or topics you'd like me to expand on. This is your time. Feel free to just hop out and put it right in the chat board. And what I do is I look down at this iPad right in front of me, and I just start taking them off of there. So at your leisure, go ahead and throw your thoughts, your questions, your ideas right in there. So what happened to all the people in purgatory since the church now says it's no more? You know what's funny about that, Becky, is it was one of my favorite George Carlin jokes. He says, we didn't used to be able to eat meat on Fridays, but now you can eat meat on Fridays. I'll bet there's a bunch of people in purgatory who are really pissed off. Right? So really funny to me because it's like the changing church, they changed their doctrines. During my mom's time as head of liturgical doctrine, they had Vatican II, So the church is growing and changing, but it's just kind of a little bit behind. Does anyone else see static? I don't see static on any of my devices here. So, and I'm watching it live on my iPad, so it looks perfect here. So, anyway, so questions. Okay, so while we're waiting for questions to come in, I have a very interesting thing that happens is questions come in cyclically. So in other words, I'll suddenly get somebody ask a question, and like 3 or 4 people within a day or so will ask a very similar question. Hi, Sarah. How are you? Hi, Paul. So the question that's been coming in lately is about, do I believe in archangels and angels in general? What are my thoughts on angels in general? And I have a lot of thoughts on this, actually. But what I find really interesting is archangels come from the Abrahamic religions. They actually, the four first archangels were Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael. And Raphael was I forget what Raphael did, but the four of them were the four archangels that were mentioned in the Talmud. And over the course of time, the various Abrahamic religions added and subtracted, and they had all these rules. But you only find the mention of archangels in the Abrahamic religions. You don't find it in Buddhism, Hinduism, and a lot of the other faiths. Now, when I say Abrahamic religions, the top three are, of course, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But there are several more that claim to be of the Abraham line. Baha'i is one, Samaritan is one, Rastafarian is one. They all claim to be coming from that same line from Abraham. So, to me, it's an interesting concept what the archangels are. They are literally Judaic mythology that has been brought into the experience. Now, as far as angels in general, I have a very different perspective on that. First of all, I don't believe in a spiritual hierarchy. I believe that we are all one and the same within the source, but I do believe that there are individuals with more awareness, that are more open and more understandably aware. And I've had several experiences in my life where people have come up to me who knew exactly what they were there for and who literally were there to give me spiritual messages or spiritual training almost. But it was more about them being a little more aware and coming in. One man actually walked up to me and says, "What have you learned, John?" And we were at a seminar. And I said, "Yeah, there's some stuff here I think I can use." He says, "I'm not talking about that." And we actually missed the rest of the seminars as he and I were discussing spirituality. So it was really a fascinating experience that I kept bumping into those kind of people. And I that happened multiple times. It happened in Germany. It happened in Griffin, Georgia. I just happened to bump into. So I believe there are people with a higher awareness, but I don't think it's a hierarchy. I don't think there are archangels and sub-angels and all of that sort of structure that the Talmud and early Christianity puts around it. Because I totally believe that we're all exactly the same, but our fears are limiting some of us. Our fears and anxieties, our beliefs are limiting us. And when we start to strip away those beliefs and those fears, those anxieties, those dogmas, those rituals, those modalities, we come back to our pure essence of self. That's why I don't talk about meditation. I talk about sitting in love, because even the word meditation is a little too overthought for me. I think it really is very, very simple. So let me jump over and see if we got any questions coming in so far. Got a couple things. A lot of talking over here. Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome. Who's in line at the steakhouse, and why aren't I with them? I love a good steakhouse. The Christ letters. I know very little about the Christ letters. What I do know is what I have read of them. They do have a very big hierarchical structure in them, and even the fact that they call them the Christ letters. The Christ is the word that means anointed one or Messiah, Savior. It's sort of the same. It's putting Jeshua on a pedestal. And though what I read, there's a lot in there that's very similar to what I talk about. But I still think there is that hierarchical structure. But here's something else I do want to say. I think everybody, including me, when information comes through, they're coming through our own personal funnels. And, you're going to hear very different things. Like when you go back and look at the Edgar Cayce readings, you very quickly find out that he was a Southern Baptist. You get his Baptist teachings all through it as well, and you get interspersed and intermixed in there are things that totally don't jive with it. And from what I've read, he had a real big struggle with this information that was coming through that was not in alignment with his faith. So remember that any time you're somebody's channeling letters or channeling anything, it's coming through their own filters. For me personally, I had an experience where, and going back to the Archangel thing, where I was doing a private session with somebody in person, and I had what seemed to be an Archangel come through, Gabriel. Referred to itself as Gabriel, but I come to know it as Gabriel. And for about 6 months to a year, I was doing these sessions where this information was coming through as this Gabriel character. But about 3 months in, Gabriel stopped referring to me personally in third person and started referring to the two of us as one. Started saying John I. And they asked why. The people who were there for the session were saying, why are you saying John I? And it was explained to me that I didn't feel worthy, and I had doubts of my own worthiness to bring in information like that. And so I needed a separate entity to put faith in. And having that entity was my way of kind of protecting my own personality, my own consciousness. And then what happened was, as the John I thing happened, they said, why are you saying John I? And it was explained that I was becoming comfortable with the information coming into me. And as I became more and more comfortable, the personality of the Gabriel character went away. And so the personality was what I needed to separate it enough from myself to bring that information through. And I think it's just kind of an interesting thing. So I think all the individual consciousness are there, and I think that we can tap into all that at any time. So let me jump over here. People in line at the steakhouse. You know what, Becky? I'd go to purgatory if it was a steakhouse. Going back to pagan times, people make sacrifices to the gods. It was superstitious, of course. Why would a loving God need a man as a sacrifice? A loving God doesn't. In fact, they were afraid of the God, which is why they were doing sacrifices. They were like, look, we're killing him, so don't hurt us. It was like, we're giving you this sacrifice so you won't take our crops. You will give us a sacrifice so you won't give us a drought. We'll give us this sacrifice so that we can thrive. So everything was about fear-based. So a lot of those things were all about that very ancient sort of fear of a greater deity. And that is like the extreme version of an external God that's judgmental and reaping fear upon you. And so all of those sacrificial things were all about appeasing a God that will harm them. And so that to me is interesting. So it had nothing to do with a loving God. I'm a Course in Miracles student. I'm just trying to gather info. The Course in Miracles is interesting. A lot of amazing information in there. And once again, I believe that all the channel writings are coming through the consciousness and the belief structures of the people involved. And for me personally, I think the information is very good. I just don't think it's the way that Jeshua would have taught it, because he taught very simply, and the biggest part of his thing was get very present, be very here and now, and so I just don't think he would have created a year-long course you had to take to say something so simple. But maybe that's the way it needed to come through her to people who needed to have that kind of process. So to me, it's a very interesting thing. Far be it for me to actually knock down anything that's bringing out loving information. You know. Um, what exactly is a pagan? A pagan. It's an interesting question because the pagan religions are the ones who don't believe in the great deity. They believe in various gods and idols. The Roman culture was a pagan culture because of the all the mighty gods on the mountain, right? The Greeks were a pagan culture because they had Zeus and Apollo and all those. So it was all about worshiping and all of those things. Then you also had the Druidic cultures, which were more nature based, but that really is an interesting question, though. Long for, yeah. And see, and visited by Gabriel. See, for me, it ended up being I don't look at it really as a visit, as opposed to the individual consciousness and my consciousness were one. What I find really interesting about channeling in that Gabriel form was when the personality was there and I was struggling with my fears and doubts, when that personality would come in, I would feel this pure unconditional love. And the second that process would end, I would drop into my fears and weep and sob and cry. And it was really an interesting experience for me. But as time went on and the Gabriel personality went away and it was just me talking, I had none of that drops back and forth anymore. I had no longer had that fear-based struggle. Chitra, I don't consider Hinduism pagan. I don't consider. I don't know. I really don't have a clarity on the pagan thing as much as I would like to. I probably should do a little more research on that. But I don't think it's just Catholicism. I think the course of rehabilitation for Christians. Interesting. My sense is telling me that everything on this plane is connected. Is that true? I'll tell you something else. This plane and that plane and all planes, they're all connected. It's all one, and so it literally is. I like to use the analogy of, being part of a room, and you're in this room, and you are part of the room, and the air in the room is part of the room, and the walls are part of the room, and in that room there's a fog machine, and you put your hand on the knob of the fog machine, and you crank up your fears so you can't see the room, and then you crank it back down so you can see the room, but then at some point you have to realize that your hand is on the knob cranking it. And you have to set down the fears and the anxieties and all the things to keep you separate from seeing the room. The oneness is always there. God is always there. Consciousness is always there. And it's a matter of us coming to our own awareness and stripping away all the barriers that hinder us from seeing it. And so that's how I see it. How do you see it? I'd love to hear that. Becky, I totally, I, I get the whole mad at you or up being upset with you because you're saying that basically everything that she believes might be wrong, or she's challenging her faith, right? And she's holding on to her faith. And so she's getting mad. Well, all of your negative emotions, fear, stress, anxiety, they're all fear-based. They're all coming from a fear of some kind. Now, in this case, it might be the fear of you burning in hell. Because that's her belief that you're going to burn in hell if you don't believe it, as she does. But it also may be that you're saying things that she on some level says is probably right, and it upsets her because no, I can't be right, or I'm going to burn in hell, right? So it really is when somebody is upset with you, it's because of their fear, not yours. You're not doing something that if she's upset about your faith. I just did a video about this. I think today it went live. Was why are Christians so angry? And it literally is because they've pinned themselves into a wall of one belief, and being inside the walls of one belief, they can't see all possibilities. But God is too big to be encompassed by one religion or one school of thought. God is everything and everyone, and in being in that space of just saying you have to believe this way, they get mad at anybody who's not. And when the Dalai Lama says, "My religion is simple, my religion is kindness," I don't think the man's going to burn in hell. So it's just my thoughts. Jesse, honestly, I don't know who Ron Wyatt is, so I will have to look into that. Let me write that down. Ron, spell it right, Wyatt. Okay. Chris, that's a great question. People ask me all about what John the Beloved looked like. My memories are very interesting. I have ideas, but my memories are all first person. So I'm seeing everything else. I don't necessarily see me that much. I saw my arms, I saw my legs, I saw my body. And it was very interesting because I had the body of a guy who was pulling nets a lot and who was fishing a lot because I was lean and tanned and and it was very, very unique. But other than that, I really don't have that much memory. Although I will say this. From my point of view in the regression, I was taller than Joshua. So I think he was a young, lean, lanky guy. And thank you. I'm doing a painting right now called Jeshua and Ishti. And Ishti means wife. And it's the two of them laughing together. Because this one looks so somber. And understand something. This painting behind me is 23 years old. I painted that in the year 2000, in January of the year 2000. And so that painting is 23 years old. And I'm a better painter now. So the next painting will be much better, I promise. Although I love this one myself. And I don't know if you can see the nuances around in the sky. If you saw that painting up close, if you go to my website, you can see the painting closer. There are layers of energy around the head in 3 or 4 levels. And when I look at people, that's what I see around everybody. The same thing. But I just wanted to paint it into that painting. It's interesting. You say Michael means gift of God. That is what the name John actually means, the gift of God. Which I think is funny. Yeah, I've never heard those aspects of God, and I'm curious as to whether that is an ancient or a New Age belief. I'd be real curious to know that. Hello, Larry in Iowa. Good to see you, Larry. Yeah, we got a good group. Got a good group here tonight. Oh my goodness, this jumped up here. Where are you? Wow, my chat board is jumping all over the place. What happened here? I don't know what's going on. My chat board is doing weird things. Recovering Christian from the Bible Belt. Hello, Steve. How are you? Do I think Paul was a somewhat bossy person who wanted to be in charge or had that type of personality? That's a great question. I have no memory of meeting Paul, but I do have memory of talking to James, not John's brother James, Jeshua's brother James, and he didn't like him. He didn't like Paul. And it's very interesting because if you read in the Gnostic text, when people asked who they should go to after he was gone, in the Gnostic text, Jeshua says, "Go to my brother James," and in the New Testament and all that, it says Peter, right? So the changes in the Bible from the Gnostic to the modern text are very they're all over the place. And it's fascinating to me that Paul. But now let's talk about. There was a book written a long time ago called "The Messengers," about a guy who, under hypnosis, remembered being the Apostle Paul, and his name was Nick Bunick. And I've met him. I think he's advanced in age right now, but I haven't met him. But when you read his book, his memories of Paul, a lot of it didn't ring true to me because of the fact that he was saying that he was the only one who knew Jeshua, and everybody else was wrong. And he basically said all those hangers-on were basically just like all the rest of the disciples were just bad people. Is basically what he was saying in his book. But when I met Nick in person, he was a very forceful businessman, and I could totally see that being what Paul was back in the day. He was profiting. You have to understand, Paul, when they were coming to arrest him, the Roman governor saved his life, and took him into his home, and he lived with the governor Felix for years. And he was a citizen of Rome who was literally doing a lot of Rome's work. So it was very, very interesting how when the New Testament comes around, the majority of the New Testament is the letters of Paul. And it's interesting because those other books were edited out at the Nicene Council, which was led by Constantine, the Emperor of Rome. So as for the 444 thing started happening, you're correct, Chitra. Yep. Felix, yes. Sharon, absolutely. Wow, got some things popping now. I see this all as everything is connected. I just kept it more basic. Really, quantum endangerment is with everything, everywhere. I'm not sure what quantum endangerment is, so I think everything is so much more simple. I'm living the Bible Belt. And, sometimes when you're in the middle of a group of people who don't think like you do, you can feel very isolated. And thank God for the internet, because you can go out and you can find all kinds of interesting things from the internet, and you can find communities like this where we're talking about all kinds of different spiritual topics. But as you're going out there and you're searching, remember, spirituality is a personal journey, and you should be looking for your truth and not finding someone else's truth to take, but listening to everybody and saying, okay, this feels right to me, this doesn't feel right to me. Because, even in the Bible it says, in my Father's house there are many mansions. There's many ways to the source. And it's a matter of finding the one that really fits true to you. And I would say this way, whatever your final path is, if it's loving, it's of God. If it's fearful, it's of man and the mind of man. So follow love and bring love into the world, and surround yourself and the people in your life with love. And what happens is you're going to end up creating love into the world, and God is love. So you are actually delivering God to the world. This one here says, I have an impression that many of the women in the group were disciples, and Jesus accepted them as disciples, even though men questioned that or were uncomfortable. It's a very interesting topic, because I do not remember women disciples. I do remember him treating women very well, but I don't know of any who were like, you're going to go here, you're going to go there, because the disciples were the ones who were given regions to take the information to. He did treat women very well, but you got to remember, he was a man in a very patriarchal time. So I mean, it was a very interesting experience. He treated women extremely well and very equally, but I don't have any memory of the disciples. So, and I find a lot of women ask me this question, and I would love to say yes. I would love to say yes, but I can't say something that I don't have the memory of. So, not that it wasn't true, but I have no memory of that. Let me see what you got. Entanglement. Autocorrect. What was the central theme or message of Jeshua? Think I know, but interested in your experience. That you are divine, that you are the creator, you and God are one, and that love is everything. And when you bring love to the world without fears and anxieties, you actually create a life that is loving and caring. And however you treat the people around you with love and respect, then you get that in return, and you can create that experience. Jeshua's belief was that we come back to that source, and that source is love. And the way we come back to that source is to bring love to the world. You know, the concept of bringing heaven to earth. Heaven is the feeling of love, and earth is the physical plane where we're down here in our fears and anxieties. And even the Buddha says the secret to enlightenment is the eradication of fear. So for Jeshua's belief was very simple. It was get very present and live loving. That's why it's called this the Live Loving Livestream. But all of the rituals, dogmas, all those things are all things that need to be stripped away. He also is not about getting out of the time frame of now. In the Bible it says, think not upon tomorrow, it'll take care of itself, right? Be here now, live in this moment. Because in this moment is the moment you get to create and be part of the world and consciously do anything. So that's the simplest way I think I could say it, and I hope that answers your question. And actually, I recently have been thinking about that exact thing. I'm thinking about redoing my website homepage with just the basic tenets of the teachings on the homepage, so people can come and get it. If they don't want to stick around, they'll at least see that, right? So, Barbie, you say you heard Joshua asked if you were up. Did you answer? Trying to know why. Answer. You're not separate. You know, I am getting a message telling me why. I was awakened the other day. And just exhale and let the information come. If you heard something, then you were connected. And so, listen. Ask and listen. That's all I do anyway. When I do private sessions, I write someone's name on a sheet of paper. I exhale and I just listen and write down whatever I hear. And a page gets written. So ask. You don't need anybody else to tell you what it means. And in fact, because it's coming through your filter, you're the one who can actually decipher it correctly. Moving on. Yeah, I think that the delineation between apostles and disciples is an interesting thing. I think it's it's more of Christian construct than anything else. Um, but yeah, I mean, that could be possible. But I, I do know that there was a core group, and there were others around. So you could be correct. Um, oh, glad, Citra, I'm glad you liked the central message. That's what I try to teach and everything. But when you're talking about something so simple, you have to give a lot of example. You have to give a lot of stories and a lot of messages, and because you can't spoon feed that to somebody and have them really get it. They have to see the example. I often say, make your part of the world so bright that others take notice and make their own choice, and that's how the world gets saved. And in this regard, you have the ability to take that simple message and live it, but unless you understand it and that you put it into practice, nothing happens from it. But thanks, Chitra. I really appreciate the the affirmation. Interesting. Validation. Better word. Validation. Validation. Oh, that's an interesting idea about putting that down into a recording on the website. Maybe I'll make it in. Maybe I'll make it part of the introduction video for the YouTube channel too. Oh, you are quite welcome, Kim. And it's interesting because people. It's like when I was talking about Gabriel earlier. My biggest thing was I wasn't feeling connected. I myself was not feeling like I was connected. And so because I wasn't feeling worthy, I wasn't getting the messages directly to myself. So it comes down to the idea of, trust is developed by results over time. You've got to put yourself out there and really just do the things until you start to trust what's happening. I'm sure that Marcy here, who, by the way, Marcy, Spirit made me do it. You should click over, you should subscribe to her channel, and then you should book a tarot session with her. She's a tarot card reader, right? And she, like everybody else, gets her information using the tools of her trade. So jump over and give her a boost in her subscribers, and check out her daily shorts. They're pretty darn good. Yeah, actually, the whole post gets posted within minutes of this being done. The whole live stream, so it is automatically a video on my channel. And when you go to my channel, on the top of the page, you'll see videos and you'll see live. Click the live, you'll see all of the live streams still in there. So feel free to jump over and get those. Yeah, yes, Marcy is very loving. And Marcy's smile is infectious and laughter is infectious. What do you say we just... Hey, Chitra, what do you say you and I just embarrass Marcy right now? I'm teasing. Hello, Tyler. How are you? You know what? You said that, and look at the goosebumps rising. Louisa is absolutely a gem. And the first time I interviewed with her, I was just taken with the feeling I got from her. And as I talked to her, it was just one of those experiences of just going, this is such a loving example of love, of an example of God and the teachings. And I just thought she was phenomenal. And she's going to interview me again in the near future on her channel again. And she's talking about doing an event at her home in the south of France. And she's talking to me about possibly coming over and being a speaker at the event. So that's possibly in the works. I hope so. I'd love to go to the south of France. That'd be lovely. Well, hello, Barbie. You see, you're 70. You're young. Popcorn and welcome. Nice. So the focus that Jesus' role was to die for the forgiveness of sins is not totally accurate. It's just for us to realize oneness with God within. Absolutely. What is sin? Sin, when it is translated, means to miss the mark. What is the mark you're missing? The mark you're missing is love. To be unloving is to sin. And so he was killed for our sins because we were doing people were doing unloving things to him. Humans were doing unloving things to him. And so what he was actually, he did, the going to the cross was a hugely loving thing from him. He had become a rock star. In fact, the first moment of my regression, just before I saw him, I saw people running down the beach to see him because he was already famous. And I was like, got down the beach, and I kind of got into the crowd and saw him. But he was already a famous guy. By the time the crucifixion happened, the Essenes were trying to make him become a Messiah and actually become a king and create an army. And he said no. So we actually avoided the Qumran and the Essenes because they literally wanted him to become the Messiah, and he wouldn't do it because he didn't believe in the messianic Judaic history or prophecies. But what he did was because he was the face of this belief, this simple belief of what I said earlier, he gave that information out and said, spread this to these areas around the area. Go out to Turkey and Rome and spread this information. And then by him going to the cross, he actually was laying his life down in a way so that the authorities would think that the belief was tamped down. But what he did was he spread it, and then went to his death that way. So and he had his moments of anguish in that, but he also had some really beautiful moments in there, which I am not going to talk about tonight because it doesn't hit me well when I talk about it. But those moments are very the moments of anguish he had. He everyone wants to make it that the choirs were singing and lights were coming from the sky and all these things were happening, and it felt big and catastrophic to many of us who were there. But that big light show that all the mythologies that built up around him say happened, it really didn't happen that way. And but he had an understanding of our divinity. Greater works than I have done, you will do it. Ye are gods. And so it was one of those situations where he did die for our sins, but our humanity's sins of doing things that were unloving and uncaring. And he also understood by going to the cross, he was trying to actually stop a lot of the persecution. And John was the only one of the disciples that actually made it to old age. And it's a very interesting story, but it's a very different story than modern Christianity will tell you. Did John of old know John the Baptist? Actually, what's interesting is there's all kinds of stories about in some of the various texts that John and James were disciples of John the Baptist. I don't believe that's absolutely true at all. I believe John was really a fisherman, a Jewish fisherman, and he wasn't really into the Essenic or the Judaic sects. He wasn't. He was a fisherman, and my first memory was him repairing nets on the beach. His, rough hands repairing nets. The story of John the Baptist is an interesting one to me because I believe John the Baptist was one of the Essenes or one of the Judaic sects that were very much into the ritualistic baths. If you go to Qumran, which I was very fortunate to be able to do, the site is peppered with various bath chambers, ritual bath chambers, and the whole concept of baptizing in water is part of the ritual bath ceremonies that they would have absolutely done in the Essenes or those things. So, and the Essenes were literally trying to make Jeshua the Messiah because he was becoming so popular and so famous. So it wouldn't surprise me if a story was created to make Jeshua the Messiah from an Essene. But I don't know that because I don't have any memory of that. But I just look at it from the historical perspective. But when it comes down to baptisms in general, I have no memory of Jeshua ever performing a baptism on anybody else. So the Bible will say it's because he baptizes in the Holy Spirit, not water. So there's no reason he should be baptizing in water because he's baptizing in the Holy Spirit. It's a very convenient answer, if that makes any sense. Well, thank you, Samantha. Welcome to the live stream. That's very lovely. Why did he let Lazarus lay dead in 3 days? I don't have any memory of the raising Lazarus from the dead. That's not to say it didn't happen, but my memories are far from complete. I can only tap into the reasons or the memories that I do have, but that is not one of them. I spoke to someone recently who had a very interesting memory, but that was in a private session, so I can't talk about it because that's a very personal thing, and I can't do. I will never divulge deeper information from somebody's private session. Hello, Sebastian. I love the name Sebastian. It's such a cool name. Aloha from Maui. Hello, Dow Now. Dow Now. Oh, well, thank you, Dow Now. Thank you for being here. I love your name. Do you pronounce it with the Dow like I am, or do you do it with the T, or do you say Teo now? Looks like Dow Now to me. I told my Sunday school teacher that if God is love, why do people say that he should have a good fear of him? We really couldn't answer with anything viable. Yeah, there's so many contradictions in the Bible that go against the concept that God is love, and it's interesting. And I'm actually kind of proud of that line, "John is love," because that's in the book of John. Thank you very much. But to me, when I look at that, if God is love, when I read the Bible, I literally, when I hear those fearful things, I just think that's the mind of man, either trying to understand love or trying to manipulate religion into power. And so to me, I'm like, I just read the parts that are loving and I dismiss the rest as fear. And that has worked out very well for me. It also makes reading the Bible a short read. So this is a kind of a gruesome question, but I'll answer it. The nails went through his wrist bone right here and were bent up so that it couldn't slide off. His feet were placed beside the cross and were nailed in from the sides. So you always see the nice little foot pedestal for him to stand on the crosses all the time. His feet were beside the cross, nailed in sideways through the ankle bone, which is interesting because the only archaeological relic they have of a Roman crucifixion is an ankle bone with a nail going through it sideways, just like I said. And so to me, it's interesting. He was also nailed while the cross was laying down. and they push the cross up, and it drops into a hole. And there's a story that goes with that. You can find it on other videos I did. But yeah, it was. If it had been here, this flesh would have ripped out because of the weight. But through here, you're going into bone, and then you're bending it and hooking it around that bone, and that's how you end up staying there. Yeah, like Dao De Ching. Yep, good. Good. Oh, Lao Tzu. Yep. Good for you, Steve. There is no reason to fear God because God is love. Oh yeah, I agree with you. I am. I love the I am. That's a great name. I am. That's good. Dow, I got to tell you, I swear to you, I think that he was coming from the East when John met him. And I have real belief, because even when he was teaching, it didn't match any of the Judaic stuff or any of the Christian stuff you hear nowadays. It was much more Eastern, and so I totally think, and Chitra, my good friend in here, she has all kinds of information about his time in India and his time later, where some of the groups in India believe that he came back and actually brought his wife and raised kids there, which personally I hope happened, because I really want him to have a happy ending as opposed to the one that I have memories of. Although I will say I did see him after the crucifixion one time, and he was not showing any signs of injury, and I was on my face, and he was standing above me laughing at me for falling on my face in front of him, because the last time I saw him, I'd carried him to a tomb, and it was a mess. Yeah. And Stephen, I would say not only does he reside in you, but we all reside within each other, and he is there, and I have felt his presence on so many occasions, and when I do private sessions and the goosebumps rise over me as I'm doing those sessions, it feels like what he felt like when I met him. If you listen to the video on my channel that says 2 moments from my regression, you'll hear the moment where I first meet him, and you'll hear me say, "My God, you can feel him. You can feel his presence," and that's was profound. And Wonder Twin. My glasses are fogging up. Wonder Twin. One of the new memories I do have is the reason John was there at the cross, because he was the only one of the male disciples who was there, was because he was there to take care of his wife and his mother. And so I have memories of them being beside me on their knees and me standing and taking care of them, and yet still looking up. And it was, yeah. Well, he had a lot of Eastern practice. So most of my memories of our time with him, it's going to sound ridiculous, was laughing and sitting on the side of the road, and he loved figs. He ate a lot of figs, and so it was like his wife, and they just would fawn over each other. And crowds would come, and he would speak, and they'd be just enthralled with him. And wealthy benefactors would take him into his home and feed him and clothe him. And he was like, I have a very day-to-day sort of relationship with my memories of the guy, but he didn't really talk about where he learned things, but he just talked about being that space, being that feeling. That's why, like, for me, I don't call it meditation. I call it sitting in love, because that was the feeling that was to be encompassed in the body. It wasn't a long practice of Eastern traditions, it was really very, very simple. It was very simplified. And when one of the things that I get out of that is when I get up in the morning, I do the first most important thing when I'm not drinking a lot of water like I am right now. Normally I would get up and I would start my pot of coffee. And then I would go to my room. I have a room that I have dedicated to my love room. And I just basically sit down and I simply exhale. And I feel that space. And I hold that space for about 40 minutes. And that, just being in that space, and when thoughts would pop up, temptations would pop up, you just push them aside and you come back to that space. And you don't need any method or modalities or affirmations to do it. You just need to push those things aside and let the quiet times last longer. And the more you get into that feeling and that vibration, it gets easy. It gets really easy. I often talk about going to the grocery store and exhaling and being in that love as I walk into the grocery store. And I watch the people around me smile at me, and I watch the people laugh and joke with me. And kids, I play with kids as they walk through the store. I do little magic tricks and things for them. And it's just because that's fun. It's just fun. And that's my memories of Jeshua. It was bringing that level of fun and that freedom and that joy and that love into the very present moment. I love what you just said, Nancy. You say that fear is a way. They say that fear is a way of respect, but you didn't buy it. Good job for you not for buying it. But fear is an emotional reaction to a future event that may or may not happen with you focused on a negative outcome. Fear is just negatively focused on certainty. But all fears can be traced back to the fear of not being loved in some form. And when you realize that's the case, you can exhale, which is the way we release fear in the physical form. Because when we're in fear, we hold fear in our bodies. And when we exhale and release those fears, we come back to a space of literally releasing all that fear and come back to that simple space of just being in that love. And so fear, but the biggest lesson I learned from my regression was, one of the biggest lessons I learned from my regression was, when he touched me on the chest and I transcendental out of my body. I left the body. And I'm feeling there, and my regressionist is confused because now I'm sitting there just moaning. Oh, all right. And she got confused because for a second she thought that that my consciousness had changed. And she actually asked the question, are you with him or are you him? And my answer was, I'm within him. I'm within him. And then she says, how would you feel about going to the next moment? And I said, I can't right now. I couldn't leave that moment. And she says, what? And then finally she leads me to the next important moment. And the next important moment was feeling all my fears and my anxieties, because they are the measuring baseline to show us what love really feels like. If we never felt the absence of love, which is fear, then we could never know love, and we could never come to understand love. It's because you have to feel the opposite to come to know it fully. And that was the next most important moment, was feeling my fears. Well, Becky, you have to understand that fearing God is a great way to put butts in seats of churches. You're born in sin so that your parents will be afraid that you're going to go to hell so that they can baptize you. And then first grade, they say, okay, you have to take first communion so you tell us you believe what you're talking about. And then confirmation, they say, yeah, do you really believe it? And they say, yeah, you have to really believe it. And then they give you, they say to you, you can do bad things, but there's only one place that you can actually be absolved of your sins, and that's here in the church. And then your hormones kick in, and they say, okay, you either have to get married and have babies with original sin, but if you don't have that inclination, then you need to become a priest or nun and serve the church. And so it becomes the cycle of fear. And then you have in 1830, Minister Darby invented the rapture. It's not in the Bible, but it's a great fear-based tool. You have to be one of the 144,000, right? Which I find it really funny. The 144,000, that's a 1,000 gross. That's gross times 1,000, right? So I think it's a pretty gross theory. But if you look at it from the perspective of fear sells, and fear gets butts in seats. So let me jump back down and see what else you guys are saying. It's a great question, Duran, but I wasn't there when they met, and I don't have that memory. They were together when John met him. Hello, Kathy Parsons. How are you? Oh. Let me go back up because you guys are typing fast tonight. Any suggestions on how to stay in love? My job is so stressful and demanding, and I've struggled with staying present and chilling any anger. Exhale. Exhale. Start catching yourself saying things like, my job is so stressful, because that's a present moment belief. Catch yourself saying things, this job is so demanding, because that's a present moment belief. Catch yourself saying, I'm struggling with staying present. It's a present moment belief, right? And understand, you could take those moments and say, oh, no, I'm not struggling. I am joyfully receiving. I am not stressed out. Things flow off my shoulders easily. I don't hold on to the anxiety of this, right? Things may be demanding, but I'm going to do them at the pace that I can do them at, and I'm just going to do them to the best of my ability. It's a matter of you reframing those moments, flipping your script, right? And that's getting present by saying, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm doing this. And give yourself permission that when you have one of those moments and you're saying something like that, to go, that's silly. I'm not doing that anymore. Because if you can laugh it off, you're negating it. Your subconscious mind will be altered because now you're replacing it with something that's more positive. And that more positive statement will start to fill your subconscious belief, and it'll get easier and easier. Your job is not to create a perfect subconscious mind. It's not going to happen because here in this world we are experiencing our fears and our anxieties. The real key is to get really good at managing them and going, oh, I feel stressed. Recognize the feeling. I'm not stressed. I am joyfully going through this without any issues. And you'll have a very different experience. You are welcome, Michael Murphy. Jump down here. And so, Nancy, I want to talk about yours. Lost your husband. I'm so sorry. Your husband and the people in our life are representatives of love in our life. They're representative of God in our life. And, whether it was a good relationship or a bad relationship, they were a representation of love in some form, or they wouldn't have been your husband, right? But understand, you're the one who's away. Your husband is now in perfect health, perfect condition, no pain, no suffering. You're the one who's away. And over there, he knows everything you would have said. So everything was already said. He knows everything you thought. Because as you cross over, you get that. You come back into the oneness of God. You come back into that space where all those things that you should have said, or there are no shoulds. You know, my mother, my beautiful mother back here, she passed away. And my sister Susan was very upset. And she had created a story around my mother's passing, because my mother was found in her house beside her bed on the ground. And my sister had this whole story of mom was in pain and she was, alone and all this stuff. And my mom came through a psychic medium to me, and my sister was in the room. I don't think she would have heard it had it been directly to her. Mom literally said, I was right where I wanted to be. I had no pain. It was like I was there and then I was here. She basically answered every question my sister had after she died. Those are the thoughts my sister had after she died. And so it really comes down to that idea that they know everything. So don't have to worry about him knowing what you would have said. He knows, right? And as far as losing him, this is his life. And this is the piece of when he passed. Right? So remember the good things. Remember the positive things. Remember he was also human. And the things that might not have been so positive, that too was him as a human, right? But this part at the end, the passing, where you have the regret of not saying the things you should have said or doing the things you should have said, that's a small moment in his life, right? Be the person that he would want you to be, coming from the place of unconditional love that he's in, right? Express that person back to him, because he sees you every day. He's around you every day. And so express that person back to him. And in that person being expressed back to him, he'll see you that way. And think of him that way. The person that he could be and should be and was. And remember him for the good things and the good times you had, the reason why you married him, right? And the moments of grief are just a small moment. And if you're focused on the grief of it, then what's happening is you're focusing on the small part, where he's much more than the small part. So I want you to think about that. Let me jump into this. I hear a lot of beeping in my ears saying things, people are talking. I hope that helps you, Nancy. Well, Sebastian, I'm glad it's working out for you. Exhaling works. My friend Tim was having an anxiety attack the other day, and he called me up. He says, John, I got to thank you. I go, why? He says, I was having an anxiety attack, and I heard you say, just exhale. And I exhaled, and my entire anxiety attack went away. Because anxiety is just fear being manifested in the body. So you exhale, you release the fear. I'm just checking down here. If I'm not talking, because I'm reading. Cry when born, rejoice when past. I'm not sure I like that. Yes, we cry when we're born because we just left the unconditional love. But I have to tell you, I had a lot of times in my life that were not good. But I'm having a magnificent time now because I've come to the place of really living what I talk about. And I laugh every day. I smile every day. I hug my son and tell him I love him every time he's here when the boy will come home. But it really comes down to you don't have to suffer here. Suffering is just habits, and it's habits from our past experience manifesting into the present because we're staying focused on the negative. Change the focus. As Gandhi would say, be the change you want to see in the world. And it works. People ask me all the time for a past life regression therapist. I don't have a really good suggestion. The one who did mine retired a long time ago. My first regression was in 1999. But I would say this. Go find a certified hypnotherapist who does past life regressions. Don't find the person who read the book and now does regressions, because there is a nuance to not mixing their belief in with yours. You want to make sure that they're not delivering information into the regression, into your subconscious. You want to keep your regression really clean. And I think it really takes a certified hypnotherapist who has done all the training to really be a good one. And so that would be my suggestion. Google search certified hypnotherapist past life regression in my area, and you'll probably find somebody in your area who does it. As far as a medium goes, Deanna Fitzpatrick, look her up online. She's the one who comes through with my mom several times now. So, and my sister, if she's still here, but you guys didn't know my sister was spying on us all. My sister Patty Swimler is spying on us all. She's went to see her as well, and Deanna is exceptional. I love this time too, Maureen. No, Joshua did not talk about his past incarnations, but he said Elijah was John the Baptist, and in the Bible he says that. I tell you, he's come already, and you have shunned him, referring to John the Baptist. Oh, I didn't know Kim Carey does mediumship. That's interesting. I love Kim. She is a lovely, lovely person. There you go. BG has a therapist who does regressions. So I'm going to answer your question in the voice of my son when he was 6 or 7. Maybe 7, probably 6. Walking into my house one day, he sticks his hand out to his side. He says, "Daddy, I'm touching Grandpa." I said, "What do you mean you're touching Grandpa? Grandpa died." He said, "No. When Grandpa died, he became energy, and everything is energy, and I'm touching Grandpa." He says, "I'm touching you too, Daddy, because I'm energy, and the floor is energy, and you're energy, so I'm touching you too, because everything is energy." So if you really think about it scientifically, everything you see is nothing but an energy event, because it's all made of atoms, and atoms are nothing but an energy event. So we go back, all we really are is our consciousness, and all this energy event around us that we're seeing is just our beliefs manifested. And so if you see a negative world, it's because you're focusing negative. You see a positive world, you're focusing positive. And I traveled through Egypt and was treated like a prince the whole time I was there, and I met another American who everybody wanted to fight him. And the only difference was I saw it in a beautiful way, and he saw it in a negative way. So it's just the energy of the world, and our beliefs create. Let me hop in. That's why he let John the Baptist baptize him. He was his teacher in the past, maybe. I have no memory of that at all. I do not believe that Jeshua was an Essene, and I do believe that John the Baptist may have been. So I don't know. So I don't have memories of that. So I can't validate that at all. You want to hear a better story from my son, Maureen? I'll give you a better story from my son. We were driving down the road one day on the way to school, singing our favorite hymn. Some of you may know it. It's called "There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly." Good hymn, right? And we're driving to school, and we had a game we would play that we'd get to the end of the song. For those of you who know the song, the final line is, "She ate a horse, she's dead, of course. Swallowed a horse, she's dead, of course." But, and she swallowed the horse to catch the cow, swallowed the cow to catch, one of those rattling songs. And we didn't let the song end at the horse. We just kept saying, "What's bigger?" And we'd sing something else. This one day driving to school, he says, come to the horse, says, "What's bigger than a horse, kind of?" He says, "A dump truck." So then she ate a dump truck, and the horse, and did all that. And then we go, "What's bigger than a dump truck?" He says, "The earth." So the earth ate the dump truck. So what's bigger than the earth? He says, the sun. I think it was the sun. And did that. I said, "What's next?" He says, "The galaxy." I said, "Well, that's it then, kind of. There's nothing bigger than the galaxy." Being the dad that I am. And he says, "Daddy, you're wrong. There's two things bigger than the galaxy." I'm like, "What's that, Kynan?" He says, "The universe and God." I said, "Is God bigger than the universe?" He says, "Yeah, because he told me he's in everything and everyone, and we control the God part inside of us." That is my son. And then the hormones kicked in, and he got much less wise. I'm going to give you an interesting. You're asking about being a recovering Catholic and how you deal with family members. You don't talk about religion or spirituality. I've got a couple of those in my family who just don't want to talk to me about what I believe, but they want to judge me for who I am. So it's okay. I respect that they have caged themselves into a set of beliefs that they have to judge others for to keep that belief. So I accept them for who they are. I respect their beliefs. I don't bring my beliefs up in front of them because it's a futile effort. And so I just go through my life, and the best way to deal with them is to make your life so beautiful and so loving and so caring that they have nothing to argue against. And the more you do that, make you shine so bright that they go, why isn't she miserable like us? And you don't have to get into the arguments. Just be the example. Grandpa, I say, yeah, Becky, it's great. Dow, I have no memory of Jeshua have children, but I also have memories of his wife after the crucifixion being in my home, and she did not have children, and she was not pregnant at the time. But as Chicher would tell you, there is a group in India who believe that after the resurrection, which I saw that he did, that he went to India with his wife and had children there. So there are stories in India about exactly that. And like I said before, I hope it's true because I really would love to have had the guy have a happy ending. Becky, you're absolutely right. That's great advice. Just stay true to yourself. Just don't bring up the topic and just laugh and joke and have fun with them, but don't talk spirituality. It's like I had a lady come to my house one time, her and her son, because I had two trees that were dead out back, and I said, "If you want the firewood, it's free, come and get it." So they came and chopped up all the firewood. And I'm back there talking. They were funny, and we were joking with them. And the lady says, "You know what I did today?" I said, "What?" She says, "I set my neighbor's Joe Biden sign on fire." And I looked at her and said, "You know, I like you. So you and I are not going to talk about politics." She said, "Okay." Never talked about it again. Had a great time. She asked me to have a talk with her son about what he's doing with his life. And she respected me, and I respected her. I didn't like her fire thing. I didn't respect that. But, but it, there was no changing that. There was no reason for me to throw my beliefs up in that situation because that just would have been bad. So I'll take the good and leave the bad. Like your salad bar, as they would say. Oh, thank you, Chitra. Thank you for being here too. And we're coming down to the end here, guys. So I'm getting ready to wind down. And so bye, Chitra. So you guys have a great night, and I hope that it was a good night for you, and I hope you had got all your answers. And that would be the last one. We're not going to do any more. And Chitra was a great example. Time to go. So you guys have a great night. Thank you for coming. I love you all. And I will see you next Friday here live.
Thank you for joining us at the Live Loving Livestream. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and visit us at johnofnew.com.